today's session. On behalf of STPI, we warmly welcome you all to today's webinar on circularity in the construction industry and climate resilience in Pakistan. Today's session is part of a broader initiative actually by STPI in partnership with the UN Environment Programme, the Institute for Global Environment Strategies, and the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination under the Living in This initiative. Our objective today is basically to consult with construction industry experts to gather valuable feedback on current practices, regulatory challenges, and opportunities for transitioning toward a circular economy in Pakistan. I would begin by enlightening about the key objectives of today's webinar. To highlight the role of circular economy principles in sustainable construction, to discuss climate risk and the need for resilient infrastructure, to showcase innovative materials and sustainable construction techniques, identify policy gaps, financial barriers, and potential solutions, and finally, facilitate meaningful dialogue, networking, and knowledge sharing. I would begin by mentioning some housekeeping rules for today's webinar. Please keep your microphones muted when you are not speaking. Turn on your cameras during your speaking slots. Use the chat box or raise your hands if you have any question. Please keep your mobile phone silent. I would now invite Ms. Zainab Naeem, Associate Research Fellow, as well as Head of Ecological Sustainability and Circular Economy as SDPI for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Amna. And once again, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be hosting this important consultative webinar today. So especially in collaboration with United Nations Environment Programme, IGIS Japan, and Ministry of Climate Change under the Living in This initiative, STPI has partnered to develop National Circular Economy Policy of Pakistan. And we believe that construction industry and real estate sector are one of the key sectors where a circular economy has great potential, and it's extremely needed at this point. Now, this sector is expanding at a very rapid rate, driven by, of course, urbanization, infrastructure development, and population growth. However, this expansion comes with significant environmental challenges, including high resource consumption, construction and demolition waste, and carbon emissions. As this sector is now at the crossroads, especially now when we are in a state of climate emergency, we can either continue with traditional linear construction model that contributes towards construction waste, or we can embrace circular economy principles to ensure resource efficiency and also low carbon development for urban climate resilient development. Now, this webinar will foster an in-depth dialogue on how circularity can transform Pakistan's built environment. We have been joined by experts from real estate sector, from construction industry, the policy makers, the private sector representatives, and also business development representatives. So today they will be sharing insights on policy frameworks, what are the best practices that they are having and that we don't know of yet, and how, what sort of guidelines should be developed or adopted by this sector to ensure climate resilient urban development and reduce the overall waste. So without taking much of the time, I would like to hand over to you, Amna. I'm more interested in listening the insights so that we can integrate the recommendations that we received today and make them part of the overall national circular economy policy that will be shared with the government of Pakistan by end of March. And I'm extremely delighted and honored that we have been joined by Mr. Bilal Anwar, CEO, National Disaster Risk Management Fund, and also as a chief guest, we will be, this webinar will be graced by the presence of Senator Sheri Rahman, who will be sharing her insights as the chief guest for this webinar. So without further ado, Amna, over to you.
We are delighted to have Mr. Bilal Anwar, CEO of the National Disaster Risk Management Fund, joining us today. I now invite Mr. Bilal Anwar for his special remarks.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum to everyone, and thank you very much. Thank you, Zainab. Thank you, Amna, and many appreciation and congratulations to STPI and, of course, the other partners who have actually organized today's webinar on this extremely important and extremely relevant topic in today's world. As we all know, Pakistan is beset with a number of evolving, emerging climatic challenges. And at the same time, it's an evolving economy as well. It's an evolving society as well. Our population growth is, of course, on the rise, and we are a society of more than 240 million people, and many of those high concentration, high ratio of those are in the youth basically bracket, which basically means that they have to go through and they have to establish themselves, they have to evolve themselves, which basically comes with a number of needs, and everything, of course, have some kind of implication, some kind of consequence on the natural resources which the country has to use. So construction industry, of course, is one of the key industry, and we know from economic history and many societies actually, the Middle East and some of in African region as well, that this industry is so important, especially when the population is growing, when the economy is growing, and that this industry, of course, the real estate and the construction industry, that has that kind of a power and a potential to pull the entire economy. And we have actually seen in a very recent past, when the few years ago in Pakistan as well, when this industry was growing, and it was the biggest source of the employment, as well as creating this jobs, as well as a number of the affiliated industries which were actually growing as well. So it has that potential for some of the kind of policy kind of modifications, and the industry is at a kind of a stalemate, as a standstill point at this point in time. But there are serious discussions which are actually going on to address those challenges, and then let this industry to evolve, because there is a need for housing, not only for housing, but the infrastructure, as well as a number of other associated infrastructure kind of developments. Now, sadly, unfortunately, what happened in Pakistan and many other places around the world as well, that this industry has not actually felt the need to be part of this kind of debate for climate change and the impacts on the climate change and the circular economy, or the green kind of construction practices, or sustainable material usage, and a number of other areas as well. So the industry has actually grown by itself. And what we know is that the practices which have evolved in Pakistan, they do not really fit into the profile of sustainable material or sustainable construction style, and a number of other areas as well. And that had its impact. And we are actually suffering, especially with the very fast-paced urbanization, and we have seen that how the practices have actually contributed into number of prevailing challenges. And the other thing is the development has been understood as a kind of an infrastructure oriented development. So anything which comes under the title of the understanding of the development, it always have to be associated with the building the roads, building the new buildings, and the bridges, housing colonies, and a number of other areas as well. So I think so the point which I'm trying to make here is, this industry has not been part of this debate for a very long period of time. It must be, and it has to be. I think this is the right time. And what we also know is that the circular economy principles and the whole approach and method has really evolved in this time period. And now, when the industry is going to kind of kick itself back into the realm of kind of playing its role for the economic growth and the development of the country, I think this is a very high time and very appropriate time that the circular economy principles are fully integrated. And I'm sure that today's discussion is going to be one of the kind of a contributing element into this debate. Now, when we're talking about the circular economy, we all know the broader principles of it. We know that you can see a building or any kind of a construction site as one of kind of a bundle which has a number of different kind of materials which are kind of integrated, which are bundled there. And when a new construction or a renovation is happening, there's hardly actually reuse, recycling of that material. And that just has not been there. A number of the reason behind that was because of the cost which is normally involved into it, and the kind of experiences and expertise of the people, especially who have been engaged in this sector, and that did not actually allow to look this in a very different perspective and different lens. But now we know that many of the materials which are there, they are reusable, they are recyclable, be actually they still can kind of carry the value for their usage, and if not entirely in that particular construction site or that construction area, it can be used in other industries as well, and we know this for sure. I think this is something which need to be integrated, and at the same time, what we are learning is there has been a lot of development and the progress in the construction materials as well. And I think this is something which need to be experimented in Pakistan, which has not been done for a very long period of time. And we know that our construction is completely inappropriate with our weather conditions. And it is also inappropriate in terms of our living style as well. And this of course is need to be adjusted, and again the circular economy principles can be extremely useful in that direction as well. So there are a number of questions which are actually revolving around this industry, and there is a need to look at from that particular perspective. So I'm very happy and very much pleased to participate in today's session. I'm very much looking forward to be part of the debate and learn from the experts, and I'm sure that we'll come up with a set of recommendations which are implementable and which actually become a part of the recommendations as part of the National Circular Economy Policy, which SDPI is actually spearheading. So thank you very much, and I very much look forward to hear from the experts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bilal Anwar. We'll be having 3 sessions for today's webinar, and now we begin with session number 1. For that, I would invite Mr. Akbar Mahmood Saidi. He's a resident engineer at ACES 18. Mr. Akbar, we would want you to shed some light on this thing, that do you think construction industry practices and real estate sector is aligned with the climate change action planning in Pakistan? And do you agree that this sector is taken on board during climate planning process or not?
Thank you so much, Amna, for the question. As far as my opinion goes on this, let's first begin with defining the current situation in Pakistan when it comes to construction and real estate. We must realize that the global contribution of construction and real estate is about 38 to 40% global carbon emissions toward the contribution towards global carbon emissions, and Pakistan is no different from that. At this time, Pakistan is also producing about 25 to 30% construction waste. Once we're done with construction, when we're done with any facility, 25 to 30% of the construction is going to waste. So we've got our landfills filled with those wastes as well. At this time, the construction materials that we're using, they're inefficient, they're outdated, and the producing them, handling them uses a lot of energy, and it's high energy consumption. Another issue that we're facing, particularly in Islamabad, where we live, we've depleted the Magla Hills range as well from all the crush. We're running out of sand, we're running out of clean water for concrete, and we're running out of cement, all the raw materials needed for cement. So right now, the need for integrating the construction industry in something integrated with circular economy is extremely integral right now. Now, moving forward, Pakistan does have a few climate change action plans as well, but they're in their infancies. I mean, if we were to talk about the Pakistan Climate Change Act, or we're talking about the Pakistan's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, or the Green Stimulus Plan, we have things that are in motion, but none of them incorporate or fully integrate the construction industry to begin with. At this time, we have the Pakistan Building Code of 2016. Now, this particular building code was updated in 2007, which incorporated disaster management, particularly related to construction in seismic zones, particularly after the 2005 earthquake was very disastrous. That's when we updated it, but it had nothing which would talk about sustainability when it comes to the environment or anything of that sort. So at this time, we have a code which does talk about sustainability for a bit. We're talking about seismic performance or anything, but we're not talking about using materials or recycling those materials or having any incentives based on green infrastructure, making energy efficient infrastructure, or anything of that sort. So we have an absence of a national framework for sustainable development, which also means that we leave our cities to expand continuously without any check on them. Then we have another issue. So we've got weak reinforcement on green building codes. Then we have another issue. All the private sector, now they're driven by profit. And there is no incentive for them which would compel them to move towards more sustainable materials, because of course they're a little higher in price and cost because they have to be, I would say, imported to Pakistan. So we've got no financial incentives for the private developers or the private sector at all. And high upfront cost related to energy efficient designs and sustainable materials become something which are a luxury for an organization which is bent solely on making profit. Then we have minimal public-private sector collaboration between the fact that government planning does not involve private real estate developers to come in and tell them what their problems are. Because real estate developers will always focus on profit, and the government, with the focus on sustainability, is an impasse that we stand on. And with that impasse, we never really get to talk much because the construction industry does contribute a significant amount to the economy. And once this industry is challenged, or I would say slightly, the incentive is taken away, let's put it like that, this industry tends to blow out of proportion or kind of sit down a bit, and it really has a negative impact on the economic development, which we have recently seen since 2022, with the current economic instability coming in and real estate sector sitting down in the backside, in the sidelines. And that has had grave implications on employment when it comes to the labor that we have in all the low-income workforce. So this is a very big issue where we have been unable to integrate the government policies with private real estate developers. And since real estate developers are again looking at profit, they really have no requirement for any, I would say, climate change adaptation policies to be integrated in their development programs or anything. The greatest thing that did have an impact on the real estate sector, I would not say it was on urban development, but when it came to building construction, was the incentive with net metering that everyone was getting. So buildings were trying to go solar and become energy efficient somehow. And with the current changes in policy and reforms, so let's see how that pans out. But of course, it's not just the construction industry that we have to look out for. There's so many other things that have to be taken into account when any policy is made. Another issue with implementing climate action in construction, most professionals and even investors, clients, they are used to using conventional materials. So I know that my father and his father and his father, they built a house with bricks and the house is still standing. And I know that material works. What incentive do I have to move towards something which has not withstood the test of time? And if that's not the case, then I wouldn't put my money into a material which is far more expensive. So when we look at this problem and we want to look at how to integrate this industry with the climate change action and reforms that we look for, I would say that the first thing that we need to do is create a policy where we can incentivize the private developer to put in any energy efficient materials or designs or eco-friendly materials that would incentivize, give them tax breaks and subsidies that will give them an incentive to go towards something which would again give them a profit and make their life easier to expand their business. You could even move with providing low interest green loans if you have to. But if the government, or if there's a policy that does this for any private developer or for any public project as well, then it does come with other things as well. So you have to put in mandatory energy efficient targets for new buildings. You'll have to put in a minimum requirement of recycled materials to be used in construction projects. You will also have to put in, I would say, I mean, this is my recommendation, but making LEED certifications or EDGE certification or anything equivalent or anything that Pakistan has mandatory for a certain size of projects. So for large project developments, these certifications must be mandatory. There should be a rating system for sustainability in public and private sector projects, both of them. That should give them an incentive. So whatever bigger rating that you can get you a bigger tax break or something of that sort, makes it easier for you to expand on your business. And you must realize that at this time, when we talk about circular construction, we are going to look at recycling, I would say, materials as well. And Pakistan at this time does not have any large-scale recycling facility for aggregates or for brick or for the rebar. They are being used on a lower level. Some people would be surprised whenever somebody is going to demolish a house, the contractor will not charge you a single rupee. They will take the entire waste away from you. So when you demolish a house, they'll take everything away. They might even give you money for doing it. So those people will take each and every brick and they'll clean them in their own houses. And then those bricks will be used for low-income housing in areas, and we can give you examples near areas near Rawat as well, the outskirts of Rawalpindi. There are houses which are built on recycled bricks. Aggregate, I know of a road which I have built inside a medical complex in Rawalpindi. I have used demolished bricks and concrete as sub-base to save on costs. For me, at that time, I would say circular construction was not the target, but saving on costs was, and it did really help us a lot because we had a lot of debris to get rid of and we just flushed it and we used it as sub-base, and it gave us a very nice result as well. So I would say right now, we need facilities that could properly recycle these wastes. Number one. And number two, we need a policy which would enforce the construction industry to follow climate action plans. Otherwise, there is no incentive for anyone. Not at all, because for any infrastructure project or any housing projects, the pros will always outweigh the cons. When I talk about building a road connecting point A to point B, nobody's going to talk about how many trees I'm going to destroy in the process. Nobody's even going to miss those trees because everyone's going to be relying on the communication that's going to be established. So at this time, there is no incentive for any construction professional to follow a plan provided by a government until and unless it's enforced and proper incentives are given. So that's my opinion on this so far.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akbar. You have rightfully said that we do need a policy for this, and that is exactly we are having this consultation today, and we are working, STPI is actively working towards a circular economy policy in Pakistan. I would now request Mr. Kamil Khan Mumtaz. He's the founder and champion of vernacular and sustainable architecture, and he also is the CEO of Kamil Khan Mumtaz Architects. Sir, I would like to ask you the same question. Do you think construction industry practices and real estate sector is aligned with the climate change action planning in Pakistan? And do you agree that this sector is taken on board during climate planning process or not?
जी शुक्रिया। अकबर जैदी साहब ने बहुत ही अहम बातें करी हैं और आपके सवाल बड़ा सादा सा जवाब है उसका कि जो आपके दो कंसर्न्स हैं, सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी और बिल्डिंग इंडस्ट्री, ये आपस में कंप्लीटली इनकम्पैटिबल हैं। और अकबर जैदी साहब ने मिसालें दी, वाज़ेह तौर पे हुदूद शुमार उन्होंने पेश किए। और ये हर एक को मालूम होना चाहिए कि ये क्लाइमेट क्राइसिस की वजह इंडस्ट्री है, बशमूल बिल्डिंग इंडस्ट्री। तो पहले आप फैसला करें कि आपको क्लाइमेट सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी में दिलचस्पी है, उसको नाफिज करना चाहते हैं, या इंडस्ट्री को तकवीत करना चाहते हैं। इंसेंटिव की जो अकबर साहब ने बात करी, वो तो यानी सबसे बड़ा इंसेंटिव तो जिंदगी है। अगर हमें जिंदा रहना है तो इंडस्ट्री को बंद करें। सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी हमारे पास थी 3 लाख साल से। जिस दिन हमने फैसला किया कि हम तरक्की करेंगे, सनती तरक्की करेंगे, वहां से ये सारे मसाइल आपके शुरू हुए और बढ़ते चले जा रहे हैं। तो इंसेंटिव इस वक्त हम टोटल एक्सटिंक्शन के दरपेश हैं। वी आर इन द मिडस्ट ऑफ द 6th mass extinction of species। यहाँ मौत और जिंदगी का सवाल है। इससे बढ़ के इंसेंटिव क्या चाहिए कि भाई जो चीज हमें हलाक कर रही है वो काम बस करो, और जिंदगी जिंदा रहने के लिए जो कुछ भी करना है वो करो। इससे बड़ा और क्या इंसेंटिव चाहिए? सो मेरे तो सिंपल आंसर ये है कि इंडस्ट्री बशमूल बिल्डिंग इंडस्ट्री हमारे हलाकत की वाहिद वजूद वजह है। और अगर जिंदा रहना है तो सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी, जो कि हम सारी इंसानियत में हमेशा से नॉर्मल वही है, सस्टेनेबल वही है। इंडस्ट्री बाय डेफिनेशन इज नॉट सस्टेनेबल। मैं तो और क्या कहूं।
थैंक यू सो मच मिस्टर कामिल खान। आपने बहुत अच्छी बातें की हैं, स्पेशली विद रिलेटेड टू द मास एक्सटेंशन दैट इज करंटली बीइंग कैरिड आउट। और आपने बहुत अच्छे तरीके से हाईलाइट किया दैट वी नीड अ बैलेंस बिटवीन देम, क्योंकि ये दोनों पॉसिबली एक साथ नहीं हो सकते। Moving on towards our next speaker, I would now request Mr. Ibadullah Khan. He is the office head for City Arcade. Sir, I would like to ask you what best practices are being followed by construction and real estate sector as of now in Pakistan for compliance and climate action.
I think Ibad is not here yet. Maybe we can take Humaira in context of national adaptation planning.
Okay, so we have Ms. Humaira Jahanzeb. She's the team lead for National Adaptation Plan with us right now. And Ms. Humaira, I would like to ask you, how can the National Adaptation Plan support urban climate resilience, particularly in flood-prone regions?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you, Amna and Zainab. On behalf of the United Nations Environment Program, the Living Indus, and the National Adaptation Plan, and the Ministry of Climate Change, I take this opportunity to thank SDPI first and foremost. It's a very timely and a useful dialogue that SDPI has organized. And also I take pride in the fact that the Living Indus, which I'm leading, is undertaking the work together with the United Nations Environment Program and SDPI on the national circular economy policy that we're discussing today. I'm going to just speak more with the lens of a program manager for the National Adaptation Plan for Pakistan, which was approved in 2023 by the cabinet. Yes, the NAP, plays a very crucial role in supporting urban climate resilience, particularly in the flood-prone regions. We are all aware of the floods, that they pose a very significant challenge to Pakistan, as we saw in the 2022 August flooding, where we had, massive devastation, extensive damage to infrastructure. So the NAP basically, it provides a comprehensive framework to address these challenges through strategies and actions. So I'm going to, divide my response around 6 to 7 key areas that the National Adaptation Plan provides support to. So the first and foremost, of course, is the risk assessments and climate-informed urban planning that the NAP looks at. It emphasizes the need for detailed flood risk assessments and mappings to identify vulnerable areas. And of course, the information that we get through that can guide urban planning and zoning regulations to prevent construction in high-risk zones. The NAP also promotes, the adoption of building codes and standards that incorporate flood resilience, such as elevated foundations, flood-resistant materials, and proper drainage systems. The second area is the green infrastructure and the nature-based solutions. So some of the colleagues who were speaking before spoke about, they set the tone for this discussion and spoke of some of the challenges, which also, of course, included, nature-based solutions, green infrastructure. So the NAP, it does encourage the development of green infrastructure, such as parks, urban forests, and wetlands, which can, absorb excess rainwater and reduce flood risks. It also promotes the use of permeable pavements, green roofs in urban areas, which can enhance water infiltration and reduce surface runoff during heavy rainfall. The NAP, the third area that it focuses on is improved drainage and water management systems. It highlights the need to modernize urban drainage systems to handle increased rainfall and prevent waterlogging. It encourages rainwater harvesting systems in urban areas, which can then reduce the burden on drainage systems and provide alternate water source during dry periods. It also looks at resilient housing and infrastructure, community shelters. And then there's this aspect of, besides all this that it recommends, there's the aspect, of course, which is very important, of community engagement and capacity building. So it does emphasize the importance of educating communities about flood risks and resilience measures and empowering them to take proactive steps. There's training programs, capacity building, participatory planning that it looks at. And then the most important, the most important pillar of all this is policy and institutional support. So the NAP calls for stricter, enforcement of building codes that the colleagues previously also spoke about, and regulations to ensure that the new constructions are flood resilient. It advocates for mainstreaming climate resilience into national and local policies. And it also highlights the need for financial mechanisms, grants, subsidies to support flood resilient infrastructure projects. Currently, the National Adaptation Plan, the project itself looks at promoting the process of NAP in Pakistan, and it's based on 4 key outcomes. And one of the main ones is to integrate adaptation and development policies, plans, and processes of the government. Just to let everyone know, the NAP project is also going forward with adaptation planning within a few of the key districts in Punjab and KP, which, SDPI will also support the NAP team with. But in all of this, it is extremely important that the political will and the government's will to do things the right way is present. We need a lot of collaborations, coordinations between the national and the provincial levels, and the bottoms up approach, the community driven, community centering approach is extremely important. Taking local communities on board, the private sector is very important. So yes, this is what the NAP actually looks at, and this is how it supports this work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Humaira, and thank you. I have been listening to Akbar Zaidi, Kamal Khan Saab, and Humaira yourself as well. So, Kamal Khan Saab, आपके points बिल्कुल valid हैं. यहाँ से अब मैं टेक ओवर कर रही हूँ एज अ मॉडरेटर। आप सही कह रहे हैं कि इंडस्ट्री का शुरू होना ही क्लाइमेट चेंज की तरफ कंट्रीब्यूशन थी। लेकिन अब बात यह है कि इंडस्ट्री स्टैब्लिश हो गई है, सो डेफिनेटली हमें इनको साथ लेकर चलना है, और कैसे लेकर चलना है उस पे हमें सॉल्यूशंस पे बात करनी है। मैं आपकी तरफ दोबारा आऊंगी एक सवाल के साथ, क्योंकि हम लोग चाह रहे हैं कि इस सेक्टर को पार्ट ऑफ पॉलिसी प्रोसेस बनाए, और with the consultation and everything, we go ahead with guiding policy guidance, जो भी guidelines हम बनाएंगे उस पे। So please stay with us, and अभी second session जो हमारा है वो start हो रहा है, and the second session is about climate infrastructure development in the urban areas, and how risk can be mitigated, especially in the built environment. Efficient construction can be done, and what recycling practices can be integrated within the sector. So without further ado, I'm really delighted to have been joined by Dr. Saeed Ahmed, Professor, Faculty of Architecture and Management Sciences from NED University. Dr. Saeed Ahmed, may I please request you if you can switch on your camera, and also if you have a presentation, please share your screen so that we can, the audience can see that. Your screen is blank as of now. Dr. Saeed Ahmed, can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me? You are audible. You are audible.
Yes, I have a presentation to share. Do I have the request? I think I'll need permission to share.
May I please request STPI IT team to grant him access?
Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
So, thank you very much, Zainab, SDPI, for inviting me, allowing me instead of Dr. Noman.
Sir, sorry for interruption. Can you please put this on slideshow?
Slideshow, okay. All right. Yes, so I'm here. Initially, Dr. Noman Ahmed got invited because of his some engagement at the university. He couldn't come, and I'm presenting instead of him. So what I'm going to present is about various approaches available in Pakistan, various models and approaches that are being used for developing housing in Pakistan, and see how they are faring with the sustainability approaches and the circularity. We all know the population growth, and the thing is about majority of the population will be living in urban settings, and that will require denser settlements, high density, most probably going high-rise settlements, and definitely housing. So as part of one of the assessments, almost 10 million housing units are required at the moment throughout the country, and majority of these are focused in the major urban areas of this country. So there's a huge demand, and there's a huge responsibility of the construction industry to respond to these demands. So what are the various housing models that are being used, and how they are faring with against the sustainability practices and the circularity of building materials and economy? So first of them can be considered as the self-built housing. Self-built housing is the one that people by themselves, not by their own hand, but they design it, they get it done, they develop it, and start living there, for which access to land is a prerequisite, capital, material, and resources to professionals as well. And in majority of the cases, and low and middle income areas and middle income groups, people do not resort to access professionals because of various reasons. And because of it, various issues arise. housing in the informal sector also falls in this category that covers the informal areas and the low income groups. In this process, usually it's a linear process, and we see that no recyclable materials are being used. Majority of the construction especially in Karachi, is being done by the RCC or the precast construction material. In other areas, it can be brick, and the roofing system is usually precast construction, RCC, or the metal. Metal can be reused, but majority of the other material is not reusable. Conventional wisdom is being utilized usually. Local masons, contractors employ their own understanding of the construction. Sometimes it becomes quite problematic whenever it goes in multiple story building. And there have been reports of building collapse and damages to the property and human lives. Architects, engineers, and other professionals have limited role in such kind of housing, especially in the low income and the middle income areas, as I suggested informed earlier, because of the high cost and accessibility. And this leads to a very limited understanding of the sustainability principles and access to sustainable material. And thus, conventional wisdom is being used, and it goes and goes on in a linear manner. Okay. So while in affluent neighborhoods, a small proportion of housing is built engaging professionals. However, this proportion is very little, and even in the affluent areas, we do not find any practices involving recycled material. So generally, it is the majority of the construction in this country is not in line with the recyclability or the circularity in building construction. Similarly, informal settlements are quite common in urban rural areas where people access the state land and start living there, taking up various procedures, illegal subdivision of land or encroachment and so on. However, laws exist to regularize in the future. That's why people start investing on those kind of land and build their housing. In some cases, materials are found recycled because majority of the low-income group people try to find very cheap material, and in a way they also are able to access markets that sells recyclable product. But these are not material, but actually products. For example, doors, windows, and such kind of girders, tiers, girders, etc. Those are recycled, and that comes from other housing that have been rebuilt over the period of time. Again, negligible or no input of trained professionals are found in such kind of housing settlements. These housing settlements often experience brutal evictions, resulting in shelter and investment damage on the construction. This picture shows a settlement in Karachi, recently evicted. The house debris is on the ground and all the material being destroyed. Whereas the very low income group resorting to the squatter settlement that are shanty or the tents built, they usually use very low tech construction and are able to be evicted easily, and the loss is quite low. So in a way, informal settlements and the low-income group resorts to recyclable material, and there is a potential because of its circularity and low-cost approaches. They can resort to such kind of input from professionals in the future if properly marketed, if properly developed. There have been recent initiative by the state as well. For example, Naya Pakistan Housing Program. It actually resorted to majorly providing the mortgage finance, and in which only construction could have been done, or a house could have been bought, or construction on an existing plot of land was possible. And there was no requirement for any green approaches or sustainable development, although that can have been made part of the overall scheme of financing. Another recent big project is about the floods redevelopment. Since people housing for flood affectees, they are going to develop almost 2 million houses. Assistance of national and international NGOs, donor agencies, and federal government are also part of the whole process. And this could also lead to an opportunity where the ideas of sustainable and green construction can be utilized. In this case, a mechanism of fund transfer to actual effectees has been undertaken. Individual and communities participate in the whole process. In some cases, people reuse some of the rescued construction material from their destroyed houses during the flood. These are some of the images from same housing initiative. And then there is another model that is termed as the incremental housing model. An example of it is Khuda Ki Basti, or God settlement, that started in Hyderabad in 1980s and then replicated in Karachi and then Lahore and Peshawar. And it is a very successful model of reaching to the low income group, who are the actual who are the real needy of the whole housing process. And it doesn't go for speculation. That is the successful part of the whole process. And the other thing is about the incremental development, which can overlap with the concept of sustainability, because people built it over the period of time in an incremental manner. And this can also help in developing and utilizing the sustainable practices. Some of the images from Khuda Ki Basti in Hyderabad, and then incrementally they are developed into Pakka houses. Housing supports initiative by urban resource centers. Some of the urban resource center is an NGO in Karachi, developed by the initially students and alumni of Daud College. But they have done extensive work in Balochistan and other parts of Sindh after disasters. They utilize a model involving the communities and using a local craftsmanship and skills and material. This is another example of developing sustainable housing possibility, and it is low cost, it is approachable, the material is available, the skills are locally available, which makes it a sustainable model. Some of the examples from interior Sindh. So the lesson learned are mainstream construction practices do not resort to using recycled material. Alternative projects, usually pilot projects, initiatives, and supported by local professionals, NGOs on experimental basis, are where sustainable practices can be experimented. And if provided policy support, that could lead to a major change in the housing industry. Substantial experimental work, research, and regulatory initiatives have already been done and are available. They may be considered for adoption at government as well as common people's level. Low carbon cement, for example, alternative reinforcing material, and green paints are some examples that are being developed and experimented. Local universities can also be consulted to help in this whole process. Pakistan Green Building Code 2023 may be considered for effective implementation, at least on the governmental level and at the governmental initiatives. Marketing and promotion must be done for building product and component positively impacting the environment. Packages of tax incentives and other instruments may also be devised to facilitate rapid adoption. In a way, incentives should be part and parcel of the whole process. Thank you very much. I think I'm within time.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Said, you are. And thank you very much for sharing these wonderful examples. I think that we do have certain examples, especially in interior sins. After floods 2022, there have been projects initiated by different organizations as well. And yes, you rightly pointed out one fact that tax incentives should be there in order to encourage the industries, the sectors specifically for converting into sustainable practices. So thank you for your insightful presentation. I would now like to request Waqas Naeem. Waqas Naeem is basically the architect, and from the architect's den, Waqas, if you can also shed some light on if you have observed any best practices, or if you think that there are international best practices that Pakistan can adopt quite easily when we talk about sustainable construction, especially that favors the climate action scenario that we have here. So yes, over to you for your comments, please. Sorry, you are on mute.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's me, Waqas Naeem, as you introduced, architect Waqas. Okay, वैसे तो climate sustainability, climate changes, these are very very big words, and it's just like एक समंदर है ये, ठीक है. सो उस समंदर में हम ये एक कुछ पॉइंट्स, कुछ चीजें हम लेकर आ रहे हैं, और वो हम we all are discussing those points. होने पे तो बहुत कुछ हो रहा है, ठीक है. There are so many things, but the problem is कि what's happening in Pakistan, ठीक है. The problem is here, or climate change, like we are hearing from like last few years that the government is doing this, the government is doing that, और यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान का तो इसके ये करना चाहिए, वो करना चाहिए. So we are just listening and hearing those things from last few years, and we even if you see so many areas are affected with floods and earthquakes. You cannot say that, but mainly is the flood, is the main problem, is the flooding in different areas, different cities, different urbans of Pakistan. So that is the main thing, and for that, like we have seen those everything happen due to the floods and all, but होने पे कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा. Sorry for that, but क्योंकि again we climate change goes into again we flooding, droughts, और बाकी हमारे agriculture systems को, canal systems को, हर एक चीज को वो कर रहा है, but कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा. और अब कैसे क्या है वो, खैर वो तो मेरे पास प्रेजेंटेशन वगैरह में वो सारी चीज़ें हैं, कैसे होंगे क्या होंगी. सो क्लाइमेट चेंज और पाकिस्तान अभी तक तो सस्टेनेबिलिटी में, सॉरी फॉर दैट, लेकिन हमारी जो लाइक अथॉरिटीज़ जो हैं, लाइक मे बी CDA, RDA, PDA, हर एक सिटी के एज पर सिटीज़ ना जो चीज़ें हो रही हैं, तो उसके अकॉर्डिंगली आई एम सॉरी, लाइक इंडिविजुअली सब कुछ हो रहा है, ठीक है. एज एन आर्किटेक्ट्स काम हो रहा है. अगर हम आगे जो हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, क्लाइंट्स हैं, वो चीज़ हम उस लेवल तक अभी तक पहुंचे नहीं है कि हम उस लेवल पे काम कर सकें. बट यस, एंड देयर इज, मैं कुछ रिसर्च कर रहा था फ्रॉम लास्ट फ्यू डेज. आई फाउंड वन ऑफ द नेशनल क्लाइमेट चेंज पॉलिसी, और उसमें सारी चीज़ें, डिफॉरेस्टेशन, यस द मेन थिंग इज, यस फॉरेस्टेशन भी है, लेकिन अगेन सारी चीज़ें हैं गवर्नमेंट के हिसाब से, वो सारी चीज़ें लाइक अगर आप वो चेक करें तो उसमें सारी चीज़ें डिफाइंड हैं, पॉलिसीज डिफाइंड हैं, और वो उसके 3-4 साल लाइक लास्ट 4 ईयर से वो डॉक्यूमेंट, वो सारी चीज़ें हैं, बट सामने कोई चीज़ नज़र नहीं आ रही। दैट्स अनफॉर्चुनेट।
Thank you, Vakas. And I think the purpose of this consultative session is because we want to get a perspective from the construction industry, from real estate sector. Akbar Sahab, I'll take your question next, but I think यहाँ पे I would like to invite the chief guest here. The purpose is कि आप अभी CD, RD सबकी बात कर रहे थे. We did reach out to them, eventually, and they better understand the constraints that are being challenging the status quo as well. They understand the policies and everything, but the issue is the construction industry or real estate sector has not been very much taken on board when we are talking about climate change process. And I think guidelines are there, but जो understanding है वो भी नहीं है. So thank you for your intervention. I'm really honored and delighted to have been joined by the chief guest, Senator Shahid Rahman, Chairperson, Convener, Senate Standing Committee on Climate Change and Environment Coordination, and also the former Federal Minister for Climate Change, and also the pioneer or the force behind National Adaptation Planning, and the powerhouse who ran the case for Pakistan at COP27. So, Madam, I'm extremely thankful, and one of the reasons is that we have been reaching out to Housing and Works and to all the relevant departments and ministries, but the challenge we faced was nobody actually took this seriously. The National Circular Economy Policy, and why they should be part of the consultative process. And we are really honored that from the policy side, from the regulator side, we have with us you today. Thank you for sparing your time, and I would request you to take the floor and share your remarks, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Beta. I hope you can hear me well. All is
Yes.
good? Oh, thank you very much. So I'm very concerned that from a little bit of what I've heard, that the policies are not aligned with private and even public sector actors in ways that are so desperately needed for the changing climate. Now, I just heard the previous speaker say that there is everything available in policy documents, and clearly to me, some of the boxes have been ticked, according to him. Well, I think to make an affordable housing policy, first of all, you're quite right. You needed the housing ministry 100% on board because they're the main regulator in this, and climate change as a ministry has this challenge that it has to work with an assortment of ministries to actually realize its policies and to ensure some level of execution, as well as to connect the dots in this very complex subject and sector. It's intersectoral, and I think we are looking mostly at urban policy right now. The National Adaptation Plan, of course, talks about rural as well. But I think now is the time for us to decide what is really to be prioritized, and circularity, zero waste, carbon emissions from what are the construction sector is hardly noticed. And why I say this, I'm very glad you're doing this. To me, it's very important. And I'm very, very keen for industry and private sector always to be on board, because I feel that without a whole of government, whole of society approach, you don't actually realize the kind of optimal outcomes you're looking for. I mean, I'm sure you'll be able to build a relevant and, sector-specific document. But the point is, we have a lot of good documents. However, it's like lawmaking. You have to have the law in place for it to be enforced. And those both processes are very important, and the stakeholder inputs are crucial. Now, one of the issues that is disturbing me is that Pakistan's population is growing very fast. We are one of the fastest population growers around. We are also urbanizing very fast, in the sense that peri-urban is often becoming urban, and there are big growth crescents around the areas of Karachi and Lahore particularly, which if you look at today's newspapers, you'll see one of the magazines talking about Pakistan's metropolitan area. I think it's called Prophet, that magazine, Pakistan Today. And so they're talking about the growth in urban areas. Now, as someone from Karachi, let me tell you, when you host migrations, and many of these are now climate-driven migrations, as well as people seeking jobs. Basically, people come to cities for jobs and what they think is a better life. They think they'll get piped water in their faucets, and they will have a job to go to, and their children might have a better education and better access to healthcare. And that is what my research has told me, that Pakistan's resilience is still measured better in our creaky, unwieldy, overpopulated cities, simply because climate risk and change and all those indicators and all policies for sustainability have to be embedded in what we used to call SDGs. Now, no one is interested in mapping those, but that's really what's needed. So health and urbanization, health access, urbanization, education are key indicators for resilience. Now, in all of this, I want to see the discussion on circularity and construction start baking in zero waste as well, because waste is clogging, untreated waste is clogging not just your cities, but your rivers, which are your lifelines. And I see Living Indus is involved in this. I'm very glad, because all of Pakistan's cities, all of them, with the exception of Quetta, are clustered around the Indus. That's how civilizations develop, as you know. And metropolitan areas are now increasingly under pressure for lack of sanitation, which this is why you're seeing related issues. You're seeing crises in the poliovirus sector. Now, untreated sewage, much of it is industrial effluent, but a lot of it is also domestic. So it's very important. Building codes, sanitary, infrastructure, what you call the wash sector. I mean, these just become cliches for us. So, unjargon it and say people need clean water, potable water, and in their taps, they need to be able to also find places to, frankly, you can't have public defecation. That's a problem that used to exist in India to a huge extent, and it has destroyed some of their great rivers. But Pakistan is increasingly finding a lack of, basic sanitary facilities in the cities. This is a huge problem. Secondly, we are also not, solid waste management is not able to cope with the kind of tonnage of garbage being sort of generated. As high consumers, cities are high consumers always, especially single-use plastics, and they're finding their way into our rivers, effluent, industrial effluent, and consumption. So this is the second thing that is going into, especially your Indus River, which is the second most polluted river in the world. It's your lifeline. It supports a great amount of livelihoods. So it's part of the National Adaptation Plan, but it has to be integrated into even your building codes. Why and how? Because it's becoming a victim of that. So is your air quality. Now, when you're looking at air quality, water quality, that has to be embedded as part of your policy, because it then addresses the dumping that is going on in the rivers. It also addresses the landfills, and also how we are not really, the formal sector certainly is not embedding circularity into the mix. The informal sector, however, is because it is what I call part of a jugaad economy of South Asia, where you reuse things and repair them simply for affordability, not because they don't want shiny new replaceables. But affordability has actually put some brakes on overconsumption. So things are repaired. I mean, Pakistan is a famous area called, Karachi is a famous area called Sher, where things are just recycled, repaired, and waste is put back into manufacturing. So the informal sector is obviously undocumented. It is a great abuser also, but it also is a smaller consumer in terms of compared to the formal sector, and it needs to be addressed. So all of this, your circular economy on one side, and then the business of building. Okay, we're talking about construction. There is a green building code, 2023. The Engineers Council is a statutory body that has actually done work with the housing ministry on this. And I did intervene in the middle and say that this has to ensure that we are not in any position where we are now even avoiding seismic fault lines. Now, the seismic issue is an old one where Pakistan encountered some years ago because of earthquakes, but that is not the only issue. You saw every disaster. Fourth point is every disaster should teach a lesson, should be a lesson in building resilience. Now, we learned clearly something from the big earthquakes, but what about the 2022 flood? What did it teach people? It should have taught people that building codes mean enforceability. There is an enforceability issue even when there are zoning and building codes that you can't build a hotel on the river bank. Everybody saw that famous image of a hotel collapsing like a pack of toothpicks, right? And in the northern areas, you have a topography that's very different from the Delta region. From mountain to Delta, your topography is different. Your building codes need to be differently abled to apply those standards. So in Gilgit or even Swat and all these areas, you're having glacial lake outburst floods growing in the summer, in early summer and late spring. They don't get reported in the national media because they locally destroy infrastructure. The lives so far we are able to save because of the programs in place now for saving lives. That's another story. The point here is that it's the enforceability. Wherever there are zoning codes and building codes, the enforceability is weak. Now, weak governance at the municipal and provincial levels is what creates these gaps in that make us sit back and say, okay, the task is too enormous. So break it down. And where will these building codes and enforceability? Okay, obviously local governments, but local governments don't always have the strength or the power to enforce building codes. So what do? You really, I mean, developed economies look at something simple and old-fashioned known as EPAs, right? Environment Protection Agencies. Now, for Islamabad, for instance, the Environment Protection Agency is anemic. For every province, they are overridden by an elite consensus that, oh, we can put off climate resilience decisions for later. So the throwing down, moving that decision down the road becomes, these are high-level decisions often taken. So because, you know, they are then pose the issue of investment and therefore growth versus climate resilience or environmental sustainability. And, you know, invariably, in economies that are debt-ridden and need growth and jobs, you are then stuck with that decision. The non-green building code wins, right? Because it's bringing in an investment, it's bringing in jobs, it's not particularly resilient other than some one or two indicators. And you know, building social and political will and therefore this seminar needs to be, you know, advanced publicly with higher buy-in and making some kind of social audit of these violations is very essential. So EPAs in each province and in Islamabad need to have, I'd built a huge program I'd done a huge study, it's still there. I would urge the MOCC to go ahead with it, that these EPAs need to have, like the narcotics force, their own force. They can't run around with one van and two policemen who have more to worry about in terms of homicide or counterterrorism and various, you know, criminal events and activities in the urban centers and even the rural centers and the buy-in. So you need a dedicated enforcement force. It's very doable. We need jobs, create them. Once that is put in, you will have far more purchase in implementing existing building codes, which is the 2023 building code. Bring it forward. It's a green building code. It is not rocket science, and build it forward into this whole construction thing. Now, on where we are going with construction, it's a growing industry. It's growing always. And I see and I hear their need for incentives. Now, when you make a switch to grand switch, I mean, they're looking for grand bargains. When you make a switch from, say, from construction, green construction to formal construction. Now, formal construction is very high waste, high polluting, the amount of dust it raises. If you look at the BRT in Peshawar, it's just coated with dust, the whole area. Part of it was the construction. It wasn't green construction. Nobody was trained there for green construction, nor was that built into their costs. So things have to, green building codes need the cost factored in. It will raise the cost because we don't have the capacity, the technical capacity. Many of our people don't. But we have an engineering council that can advise on it. We have expertise that can be developed. And the whole point is, the good news about this is, when there is need for integration, then you have an alignment for circularity. Then you do have examples like the Sindh Building Housing Plan, where they're building over 2 million resilient houses. So the lower cost of those housing projects, and the World Bank is supporting it, as the rest of it is, it's a 50-50 PSDP and World Bank's projects. Those are literally cut out examples you can just cut and paste their experience and say that this is a model when there is a cost push and you have, need to build resilience housing. So they use materials that are not in the formal sector. They use materials that are lower cost. They also, because because this program gives the land titles to the householder. See, equity is everywhere a need, and it must be mentioned. Gender equity inclusion must be mentioned everywhere. So because this program is giving land titles, and it's giving land titles by identifying, saying, you're bringing this household to me, you're going to be the landholder. Previously, this was unallotted land, and Haris are moving from, and they're exploited and vulnerable. So the fragility is reduced by the woman being the recipient of that land title. The woman is a natural nurturer of the land. They are always closer to what are called nature-based solutions. They will seek not to exploit the land beyond the point where it is not, tillable. And they will see climate stress coming. Right now, your dams are in dead heat. There is little water for the sowing season certainly in the Delta region of Sindh. And so the women are trying to make use of the NGO projects that go there and show them agriculture that is climate smart and resilient. And these are transitions that need to happen simultaneously. They're all integrated. And for that, I've noticed there are a lot of good examples. I can give them to you, but we don't really have the time for that. But what's going on here is the good examples are being drowned out. They are not being scaled up formally. So there are a lot of good pilots floating around the country, running their projects for agriculture that is resilient, that ties into how the dam is built, how the little irrigation canal is built, that ties into how the building code there is enforced. So they're moving away. The advice is to move away from where the river may change its course for those areas. Those are their livelihoods. It's their future. Okay, 2/3 of Pakistan was underwater, 1/3, sorry. And so people need that kind of geo-mapped advice. That's part of your construction mandate here. And they don't have the wherewithal. So that's where governments and large MDBs need to step in. Lastly, I want to say that the construction industry is notorious, okay? It's notorious it generates more than 30% of solid waste, more than 38% of carbon emissions, and over 49% of what it uses. The cement sector is also a big releaser. This is leading to landmark overheating. Milestones are being created in Pakistan that we don't talk about. I don't know why, but in the last 3 years, this is applicable entirely to construction. In the last 3 years, I mean, you can use passive building, which is sustainable, which means going back to some of the old wind tunnels and all. There's a very simple way of doing that. It's cost effective. So you do that and build that into all those areas that have to be rebuilt. I mean, it's how you process the sustainability into it. And the mandate for enforcement must come in, that we've got to ensure that there's a housing shortage in Pakistan for some unknown reason. There are things being built and built and built, but there is still a huge housing gap in Pakistan. And mostly it is the bottom of the social pyramid. And the bottom of the social pyramid is the one facing the disproportionate impacts of climate stress and overheating. For the last 3 years, Pakistan's cities in the south, Jacobabad, Dadu, Turbat, have experienced 53 degrees in the summer, in the height of summer. Now, that is not that's not area or temperature for cultivation. It's not for agriculture. It's not for construction. Human activity cannot be sustained. People start, fainting, and they're not able to survive this kind of heat outside. And then the suggestions given to them are find shelter. Well, they're laboring. So their income is tied to their labor, which is tied to their heat. And if they're laboring inside also, I have been inside a furnace-like home in Turbat. It was like a furnace. They're obviously not able to air condition their home, but I see the venerable, sustainable architect Kamil Ali Agha Saab sitting here. He can give you all the suggestions. They're there. They're not rocket science. And our societies, our indigenous societies, from hundreds of years ago, have these solutions, which is what we call now in jargon, passive construction, for sustainable construction. So at least let's enforce those for the cities that are becoming urban heat islands. They're trapping heat. The construction is crucial. The green areas of our cities are not enforced at all. The parks are, well, the parks. And if you look at the percentage of how we're rewilding our cities, it's still very low. And Pakistan is the lowest forested country in South Asia. I mean, it just has a disastrous deforestation, which is, of course, related entirely to the timber mafia. If you go to Chitral, you'll see it's gone brown. So from Quetta to Chitral, the browning of Pakistan is happening. This is entirely related to your codes, your green codes, and they need to be enforced. So for instance, if timber is suggested as a way forward, stop putting it in your green codes. There is no timber left in Pakistan. The mafias have taken it away. They're putting it into the Swat River, sending it out of Pakistan and accepting it back as reprocessed, trafficked wood from Afghanistan. It's not. It's from Pakistan. It's from Pakistan's mountains. So the policing of your codes, the enforcement and execution of existing policy, and advancing the new needs of sanitation and wash sectors is crucial for both our cities and you see the rural areas are still able to manage the cleaner air, but our cities are not. They're becoming dense. They're becoming full of squatter settlements. I mean, 40% तो कच्ची आबादीज होंगी और वो कच्ची आबादीज का अपने हशर देख रहे हैं तो जाहिर है उधर पोलियो फैलेगा, जाहिर है और चीजें होंगी. This is all related. So an integrated green building code for Pakistan has to be enforced, has to be bought in. Each province will have to make their own. So enable that. It's not, I'm sorry, enough to have consultations. वो आते हैं हाँ करके हमारी bureaucracy. They're pretty good sometimes. They come, they agree, they go. But they're helpless, okay? Even if they have high integrity, they're helpless. And so what we need to do now is ask the provinces कि आप अपने building codes बनाएं. गिलगित वाला और आजाद कश्मीर वाला और इस्लामाबाद वाला और पंजाब वाला building code, KP वाला फर्क होगा, बहुत फर्क होगा. Its needs will be different. but it will have certain standards baked in, from seismic to green sustainability to resilience, that our cities must also respond to. And obviously the cities have to have very serious overthink on how their municipal infrastructure is collapsing, and that's got to be addressed in your building codes. The water deficits that are growing in our cities has to be addressed. So I think that you're going to need a little more than a document. You're going to have to build in public expertise. And I'm not going to speak for the industry, but the industry's got to have a voice. I say this because you may say the private sector is predatory, particularly the cement industry, but if they don't have their incentives, they will carry on. They have the power and they have the capacity to keep carrying on, because Pakistan will have to keep building if it has to grow. So the industry has to be involved. There are no two ways about it. And they'll have to have creative incentives for them. If you don't have the money to give them tax breaks, then you have to give them rankings and public recognition, whatever makes their policy wheel tick and their decision makers switch to affordable, sustainable housing, then it has to be done. And some real thinking has to be done for that. So thank you very much. I'm sure I took up too much time, but I'm very, very passionate about this. And I think that whatever work you're all doing, even if we're still thinking through things today, it's very important. Do share widely and do broaden the public conversation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for an eye-opening speech. Every time it's an eye-opener whenever we listen to you. And also circular economy, you pointed out that rightly, it's a jugaad economy that we have been practicing, and the only thing is we need to mainstream those practices. Secondly, without equity, no policy can be enforced in principle properly. And I think since there are really some good practices, and you have pointed out those practices that can be replicated in other parts of Pakistan as well. And also one important point is that the provinces should come up with their specific building codes. Why? Because every province has its own temperature, climate, variabilities, and weather patterns. And, delta is different compared to the mountainous region. The topography is different. So we can't have one building code for, in the entire of the country. It's very important to hear and listen and integrate the voices of the provinces when it comes to not just construction industry, but overall climate change planning, NDCs, and whatever we are doing. Without that, it's uniformity cannot be brought into the policy enforcement. Thank you once again. And I will be sharing the final document and the recommendations draft with you before we make it part of the national circular economy policy, because the inputs that you have shared with us today are very insightful. So thank you for your
time. Thank you very much for doing this. All the best.
Zainab, you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So thank you. Now we are moving forward with the last session, and we have many speakers for this session, interestingly. So I will be starting with Nazish with your intervention. So Nazish, just generally speaking, as the Madam Sherry Haman also pointed this out that industry needs to have their voice. So Nazish, in your perspective, how can sustainability be integrated into the supply chain of the industry, whether we are talking about cement industry, whether we are talking about decarbonization, or even net zero, which is quite impractical, especially in case of Pakistan. But still, we hear these words, net zero, greenwashing being done by private sector. But in practicality, when we are talking about these concepts, what in your perspective can be done to make these supply chains, sustainable by involving construction and real estate sector? Over to you.
Thank you, Zainab,
for inviting me here. I'm just going to introduce a little bit about myself. I'm Nazir Sheikha. I head the Center of Excellence in Responsible Business at the Pakistan Business Council, and it's been an enlightening discussion so far. I also, there's two hats that I wear, which I've been invited as from the Pakistan Business Council, but I was also a trustee of the Indus Earth Trust. And if you're not aware, Indus Earth Trust has been investing in sustainable architecture in rural Sindh and Balochistan, and it has come up with models based on materials, using sustainable materials for buildings over there. So putting my two hats on, but I'm going to speak mainly from the industry here, from the industrial role here. There are things that are going on, and we have to sort of identify the good practices that we do see. I'm going to start off by referring to the Telenor head office, which is located in Islamabad. And it's basically uses a rammed earth building technique for its walls. And that is, you know, when you talk about the epitome of the circular economy, we can basically look at that. Not only are those walls very pretty to look at, but they are built, so those things add to, you know, the concept of circularity in the environment, in the sense that they are made from local material, but it also aligns with reducing the energy usage within the buildings as well, because it keeps the buildings cool in the summer and also warm in the winter as well. So using that example, you know, we can see that there is a potential for going in that direction. The other example that I want to talk about is that there is many of the textile sector have you know gone for the U.S. LEED green building certification. And basically that looks at, you know, not only the construction part, but also, you know, it looks at the building usage part. So those are the two areas that, you know, need to be looked at when we're talking about sustainability and, you know, also climate action as well. And these are and, you know, there are other examples, you know, when we talk about it, we're seeing the built bricks being made from waste plastic, when we're seeing plastic roads being used in construction. I think for all of that, there is a need for people at the industry level to now focus on, you know, getting their requirements across. So you do see that you know, once companies start calculating their carbon footprint and, you know, will look for towards energy efficiency, they will need to look at, you know, what goes into their systems and what comes out of it, you know, more like the life cycle analysis model. So if, you know, we can sort of start these discussions in the construction industry and, you know, having these discussions that they're basically not only, especially in the formal sector, not only thought about, you know, that these will be the requirements that, you know, we will be needing to go forward. This will, I think, be a good way to come across. We have been given examples of green steel and green cement, and, you know, there is discussion going on in those areas as well. When we're talking about the more, you know, formal sector makeup of buildings. And so, and those, especially in the green cement, there is the discussion of reducing the carbon footprint by reducing the fuel use and changing the clinker. And these discussions have been going on for some time. I think now, you know, they need to be taken a step further. In the sense that, you know, look at building codes, as you've said, that there need to be building codes at the provincial level, but I think there also need to be building codes that are for the rural, urban, and also, you know, the commercial sector as well, so that all areas are covered and there's no loopholes. As you know, Senator Sharon Rahman said, there, you know, the construction sector is the least formalized, or and is notorious as well in some ways. And it's not only in Pakistan, we do see it in all over the world, even in the developed economies. They need to be, if there are, certain guidelines for each, and then there is enforcement, I think that will happen. And especially now when we're talking about the commercial sectors, enforcement will be faster because, there is an increased requirement, transparency and accountability for the carbon footprint of those commercial entities. So that will also come in. So these are my I've given you a huge synopsis, but just want to add something here, that the banking sector will also need to be part of this conversation as well, because they are the lenders for certain portfolios. And also now that they have the ESRM in place, I think in future there will be more a target for banks as well to move towards sustainable building portfolios as well. So I'm just going to end up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazish. Thank you for quoting out some, examples from Pakistan as well, and also the example you quoted of Telenor's building. It's a good practice that they're doing, and especially keeping in view the point, as Madam Shahri Rahman also pointed out, that the temperatures are exceeding beyond 53 degrees Celsius, and we're not sure how the situation is going to be. And the threshold limit for human bodies to the temperature that they can sustain is 35 degrees Celsius. If it crosses 35 degrees Celsius, our enzymes start to degrade, and so the construction needs to be done in a way. I know there are certain temperature limitations that are being made part of the building codes as well, depending upon how the internal cooling system should be, or what material should be placed within the construction, that the buildings do not overheat. So yeah, it has to be there, but I'm not sure that those are being even enforced or implemented.
Yeah.
But we have our speakers from different sectors. I'll be taking them next. Also, we have Ahad. Also, we have Dr. Naveed. So before taking Ahad, I would request Dr. Naveed, who is basically the Director Buildings Energy Research Center, UET Peshawar, for his presentation. Dr. Naveed, over to you, please. And also, if you can share your screen. Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, do I need to make it a slideshow or is it?
Yes, slideshow, please.
Okay, so I'm sure we will be slightly short of time, so I will just quickly go through the important parts of my presentation, or the parts that weren't discussed. So we are basically Buildings Energy Research Center. Lots of things that you pointed out we have actually worked on, especially, Senator Shahri Rahman Sahiba, she talked about that we need to have a code as per the climate region or the weather pattern of that particular data. So we have actually done that. The Energy Conservation Building Code 2023, we have kind of generated the code for each and every region, and we have a very good online software for it. So anyone who wants the energy code, not the building code, but the energy conservation code for their region, they can just go and log into our website and find out that energy code for themselves, for that specific region. One very important thing is that regarding especially the climate change and the relevant disasters and concern with it. One of the most important is the heat waves. The reason the heat waves are quite disastrous is because they are recurring every year or every 6 or 7 months. And we have done this study that if we build these buildings as per the energy code with some additional insulation, with some improvement in windows and ventilation, maybe passively we can live in buildings that are quite good, that are quite, the temperature is relatively normal in face of the increasing temperature. So, specifically for areas like Jacobabad or other really hot areas in Pakistan, the recommendations are not that complicated. So Senator Sawa really rightly said that all we need is to insulate our buildings, to have this slightly proper design, and it can be custom made. So we can suggest and recommend everyone that simple design. We are quite fortunate that for the first time we have helped building control authority adopt this code. So in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we have one authority who has adopted this code and they are going actively into implementation. We are very actively working with Sindh Building Control Authority, and they're quite interested. And maybe this energy code will be adopted in Sindh soon, which kind of gives you people the passive way of controlling the heat waves, and somehow people will be living in relatively more comfortable environments as compared to when they have no insulation. So I will just quickly go through. In Buildings Energy Research Center, we kind of provide a lot of services in energy efficient passive heated and cooled buildings. I will not go through a lot of discussion, but I mean, just moving on to the next slide is that even in case of the energy equation, the buildings are really important because 63% of the total electricity produced in Pakistan is actually consumed by buildings. So I mean, from the operational part, lots of emissions from buildings, and I mean, 20 to 30% of these emissions or this energy consumption can be reduced by using very simple techniques. I will just do a lot of passing, but the circular debt that we discuss a lot of times. I think buildings are kind of, I wouldn't say the culprit, but the main reason, because from buildings we need the peak demand in summer. So the industry is going with flat demand more or less, but from building we are getting these peak demands. So I mean, if we can control this peak demand from buildings especially, we can control the the more and more power addition that we need with the growing population and with the growing or the improving lifestyle especially. I won't touch much the circularity we have already discussed, but there needs to be a cradle-to-cradle approach. So I mean, this need to be designed. The disposal need to be at the design stage of any building. So we need to have this idea that okay, after 30, 40, or 50 buildings, the building will no longer be there. What will we do with the waste? So it must be designed in the earliest stages. A lot of things I will just skip. I'm considering that we are slightly late, so that's why Zainab I will be going a little bit quicker. And from the point of view of climate resilience, I was spending. I mean, floods are also disastrous, and it is important to have the climate resilience with respect to floods and also the earthquakes. But I mean, obviously, we are not getting floods every year, and not the earthquakes every year, and that's very good. We shouldn't get them at any part of the year. But the heat waves, we are being hit by them every year. Every year, June, July, August, we hear about these heat waves. And that's why we should be really worried about this. We did a little bit of study on it. It's really interesting. And the reason for adoption of this code becomes really compelling in the sense that if we insulate our buildings with 1 or 2 inches of insulation or 3 inches of insulation, most of us will be passively living in comfortable indoor environments. So I mean, it reduces the uncomfortable hours, for example, because of extreme hot temperature or cold temperature. It reduces those hours. For example, probably with very good insulated houses, 70% of the time we will be living in a comfortable indoor environment, although there will be like the outdoor temperature will be more than 40. So it's really especially important for urban areas, but also for cold areas where we see a lot of trees are cut to keep the homes the indoors of the homes warm. However, if those houses are insulated, a lot of trees can be saved. So it's a very good and easy kind of easy recipe. Yeah, and that's why for the circular economy to actually the systematic way of adopting the circular economy is to have the environmental product declarations. That's what we are trying to do here at Buildings Energy Research Center. We have kind of developed the software, which is called the life cycle analysis. And in that, we have included the environmental product declarations of each and every product. So that if someone is building this house or a huge building, government or anyone else, so they will know that what is the embedded carbon, what are the emissions from their construction, which is a very good way. And then we also give them an option to kind of switch to the alternative materials green materials or relatively material with low embedded carbon. It's a very interesting tool. We have developed it for Pakistan specifically. I mean, we hear a lot about the international rating systems, for example, LEED or BREEAM or EDGE. You know, they are very good tools, but the problem is that they are not developed keeping in view the conditions of Pakistan, and also they are kind of expensive. So I mean, they cannot be adopted on a mass scale. In order to adopt them on a mass scale, we need to have our own indigenous tools, our own indigenous rating system or green building rating system. This is what we are working on here in Buildings Energy Research Center with the aid of BMZ funded project, the transformation of building sector in Pakistan, a pathway towards clean, green and sustainable building. And we have developed those tools. And obviously through this forum, and we are also trying to propagate it through different media that people should start using them, because they are open access to them, they are freely available. Very good tools for decision making when it comes to building your own house. Yes, so a lot of improvements can be done to buildings to actually make them, you know, climate resilient, heat wave proof, or cold wave proof. And it's a win-win situation for everyone. That makes a very good economic case. The energy that they save and the additional investment that they need, it can be recovered in 5 to 6 or 7 years. So it's a very good case. We did a lot of studies. If you kind of adopt this green or energy conservation building code, I mean, your bill can be reduced by more than 40%, and you can, you know, same as the operational carbon is reduced, and the additional cost can be recovered in a few years. A lot of studies on the kind of houses that are being built in Pakistan, for example, 5 Mala, 10 Mala canal houses, and all of these are very compelling cases for actually building your own house energy efficient as per the energy conservation building code. For example, you know, from this this is a very simple figure which shows that how to kind of adopt your building to the code. So it's just adding insulation, having these double glazed windows, having shades over those windows, all of those passive techniques that were, you know, kind of the knowledge for this or the techniques were developed many years before. I mean, so most of them are passive techniques which help us keep the buildings in the good condition. It also reduces or keep the electricity bills lower. So some of our partners that we are working, we kind of discussed to systematically approach the buildings, the circularity in building, the operational energy or the operational carbon emitted by a building. And for example, this is a case study of a lot of countries, both developed and developing countries. And we see that all of these countries are targeting net zero buildings by 2050. Some are targeting it by 2070, and it's kind of a circularity built in the building. So we actually need this roadmap. Fortunately, we have developed this roadmap, and one roadmap, for example, for decarbonization of the capital of Pakistan, let's say Islamabad, we have submitted that to the to CDA actually, and they're reviewing it. So it's a very good roadmap to see that how stepwise by 2030, 2040, 2050, how will we reduce the carbon footprint of buildings specifically. Yeah, and we, you know, Madam Shiri Rahman also discussed that we need this policing. So, I mean, in order to implement this course, and that's why we provide a very good framework to every public or private sector, to any authority, to building control authority, that how will they implement these codes? What is the easy way of kind of implementing these codes? You know, the good or the better part of the story is that lots of people are now willing to adopt this code because they are seeing the impact in the next month. So if you build a house, energy efficient house, or if you retrofit it and include these good energy efficient passive measures, you will see your bill going down the next month. So that's why we see a lot of readiness, and it's a very good point in time that we should encourage and implement these energy conservation building codes. Actually, yeah, a few of the buildings, for example, this was a low-cost housing. The buildings designed for low income. We implemented a lot of passive energy conservation measures in this building. It is in the PC1 stage, hopefully approved, and we will have kind of this energy efficient, passively designed house. And if it is being built, the results will be, you know, So then it discusses the techno-economic analysis. The payback period is quite low. What I would really like to, so these are a lot of tools that we developed, and they can be found on berc.pk. We discussed this rating tool, and we have developed this first indigenous rating tool for Pakistan, which is tied to the policies and the codes of Pakistan actually. And you can get your building actually certified at a very low or kind of a very negligible cost, because we are offering this certification for free at the moment. So anyone, any housing society, private sector, or any building control authority can get their building certified at an extremely low cost. So we have, a lot of good tools that were developed in-house with local talent, with local engineers, and keeping in view the local techno-economic and weather conditions as well. And I hope that all of these tools are on the ramp, and most probably sooner or later we will see a lot of people using them. I will just skip a lot of slides. So we are kind of also offering the capacity development to any institution, because we are under the project funding currently, and we can offer these services freely to embed the circularity in their building construction and design, to kind of design buildings for them that are passively energy efficient. And with this, I will actually end this my presentation. So yeah, it was a kind of a sprint, but I hope everybody was with me. But I was just keeping in view that probably we will have more presenters here presenting their work. So I thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naveed Ahmed, and it's a very insightful presentation, especially the Islamabad's plan and the kind of tool you have launched. And indeed, I think academia they always come up with great solutions, and the only problem we face is that within the gap that exists within industry academia, I think that needs to be bridged, because if we have solutions from academia that can be implemented, that can be enforced, I think there's a lot that needs to be done in context of collaboration within these two key sectors. Thank you very much for sharing, this insightful study that you have conducted. Many congratulations, and we look forward to, the kind of recommendations that we require for our policy document from your end. So thank you for joining us today.
Just one thing, that we are working on NDC 3.0, and we are including the buildings for the first time. So it's a very good work that we are carrying out. Hopefully, we will be presenting it at SDPI soon.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. So Ahad, now I'll come to you for my next question. Especially, I also see in the chat box that there's a question around, are there any startups in Pakistan focusing on climate smart agriculture solution, and what challenges are they facing? But in particular, you are also heading the the public-private sector engagement unit at STPI. You have worked extensively with private sector, and you also have an engineering background, and based on that, I would request you to highlight on how you see the public-private partnerships help overcome the financial regulatory challenges, especially pertaining to construction industry and real estate sector. Also, if you can shed some light on the real estate sectors in specific, because they are the ones who are doing the actual marketing of the housing societies, and also inviting investors from the overseas Pakistanis, you should invest here and there. So in your opinion, what are the gaps exactly, and what needs to be done? Over to you.
Thank you, Zainab, and wonderful presentations before me. I think technical aspect काफ़ी हद तक cover हो गया है. मैं थोड़ा सा policy angle, and then of course मैं आपके private sector public private partnership के हवाले से भी बात करूँ. Main जो चीज़ है हमें थोड़ा सा I think circularity एंड सस्टेनेबिलिटी को थोड़ा सा हमें अलग करने की ज़रूरत है इस डिस्कशन में, बिकॉज ये डिस्कशन है अराउंड सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी पॉलिसी, एंड वाइल वी हैव पीईसी का भी ग्रीन बिल्डिंग कोड है हमारे पास, नीका का भी 2023 वाली पॉलिसी है, but again they fail to mention circularity. ये एक इशू है एंड उसका एक रीज़न ऑफ कोर्स ये भी है कि फॉर एग्जांपल पीईसी का अगर आप ग्रीन बिल्डिंग कोड पढ़ें तो उसके अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा फोकस है ऑन ओवरऑल बिल्डिंग सेफ्टी एंड द टाइप ऑफ मटेरियल दे यूज स्ट्रेंथ वाइज. So unless or until we have a used material database and certification methodology available, तो ये बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा कि हम इस चीज़ को लेके चल सकें. Going forward, I think, for example, if we want to go for recycled concrete, steel, and other sustainable circular practices, तो उसके अंदर जब तक आपका material certification का तरीक़ेकार, because normally we fail to enforce material certification even at the building level. So आप circular material की बात कर रहे हैं तो that might again be very prone to accidents. जहाँ तक ग्रीन बिल्डिंग्स की बात है तो ग्रीन बिल्डिंग्स अगर हम एज के हवाले से डॉक्टर साहब ने भी जिक्र किया, बात करें तो वो 3 एस्पेक्ट्स को देख रहा होता है: एनर्जी कंजम्पशन, वाटर कंजम्पशन एंड दी स्टोर्ड एनर्जी, जो उसका कैप्टिव एनर्जी पार्ट है जो कि मटेरियल से रेलेवेंट है. एंड अगेन it fails to actually sort of correlate with the aspect of circularity. और ये आई थिंक करना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि जब तक हम सॉर्ट ऑफ जैसे जापान के अंदर एक मटेरियल पासपोर्ट के नाम से एक प्रोजेक्ट है जिसके अंदर एवरी मटेरियल एक्चुअली हैज़ अ नंबर असाइंड टू इट एंड देन यू कैन एक्चुअली सी वेयर इन द लाइफ साइकिल इट इज़ बीइंग यूज्ड. दूसरा एस्पेक्ट जो रेगुलेशन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जो आपने प्राइवेट सेक्टर के हवाले से, स्टार्टअप्स के हवाले से बात की, सो देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ वेरी गुड आइडियाज़ जो कि इसके अंदर ना सिर्फ ओवरऑल सस्टेनेबिलिटी में बल्कि सर्कुलरिटी के हिसाब से भी देर आर अ लॉट ऑफ वेरी गुड आइडियाज़. कंस्ट्रक्शन नॉट ओनली इन बिल्डिंग्स बट कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ रोड्स और ऐसे बहुत सारे आइडियाज़ हैं. बट द मेन प्रॉब्लम इज़ द enforcement. Unfortunately, policing is not the only way out. आपका कैरेट एंड स्टिक अप्रोच दोनों तरफ से चलेगी. मेरा अपना जो है वो कैरेट की तरफ रुझान ज़्यादा होता है एंड आई बिलीव that unless or until we create an incentive for people directly to go towards sustainable practices जिससे उनको पैसे बच रहे होंगे, तो फिर ही हम जो है ओवरऑल सस्टेनेबिलिटी की तरफ जा सकेंगे. मैं एग्जांपल आपको जिस तरह सोलर की भी एग्जांपल दें, सोलर पीवीज वर अवेलेबल 5 years बैक, लेकिन उस टाइम पे कोई अपटेक नहीं थी. 10 साल पहले भी ये अवेलेबल थे, कोई अपटेक नहीं थी. जब आपने इंसेंटिव क्रिएट किया तो ऑटोमेटिकली उसके अंदर अपटेक आ गई. और इसी तरह ही आप बाकी जितनी भी सस्टेनेबिलिटी रेलिवेंट चीज़ें हैं उनके अंदर आप इसी तरीके से चीज़ें क्रिएट कर सकते हैं. इसमें अगर थोड़ा सा मैं बात करूं पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप्स के हवाले से, आपने बात की. ओवरऑल जो पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप का मॉडल गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान फॉलो करती है वो थोड़ा सा अगर हम टेक्निकली देखें, बाय डेफिनेशन जो पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप की डेफिनेशन है उसके मुताबिक वो थोड़ा सा फ्लॉड है. फ्लॉड इन द सेंस के हमने कैप लगा दी है कि इससे बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट ही पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप में जा सकता है, विच इज़ नॉट ट्रू. अगर हम इंटरनेशनल एग्जांपल्स देखें तो बहुत छोटे प्रोजेक्ट्स भी पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप में गए हैं. मेन उनके अंदर एक ट्रस्ट का एलिमेंट है, उसके अंदर एक रिस्क शेयरिंग का एलिमेंट है, एंड देन देर आर अ नंबर ऑफ क्रिटिकल सक्सेस फैक्टर्स जो कि यूज़ किए जा सकते हैं, जिसकी बेस पे public private partnerships can be made not only in the construction sector, in any sector you want. Normally क्योंकि construction सारे projects पे, चाहे हम social sector के projects में देखें, जो आपका construction side है that usually takes the bigger amount of budget. So उसकी वजह से automatically उसकी importance थोड़ी सी बढ़ जाती है. बट फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल स्टार्टअप्स की मैं अगर एग्ज़ाम्पल दूँ आपको, तो 2-3 स्टार्टअप्स जिनके साथ मैं रिसेंटली मैंने काम किया जो इससे रेलेवेंट भी थे बिल्डिंग सेक्टर से, उनके अंदर फॉर एग्जांपल एक बैक्टीरिया बेस्ड जो है वो एक ऑर्गेनिक सोल्यूशन था, जिसके अंदर आपकी वॉल को पूरे को जो है वो जोड़ा जा सकता था। सो इंस्टेड ऑफ प्लास्टरिंग, आप जो है वो एक ऑर्गेनिक प्लास्टर यूज़ करते हैं ब्रिक्स को इकट्ठा रखने के लिए। इसी तरह बहुत सारे स्टार्टअप्स हैं जिन्होंने डिफरेंट मटेरियल्स की ब्रिक्स बनाने की कोशिश की, विच आर मोर एनर्जी एफिशिएंट एंड सिमिलरली गोइंग फॉरवर्ड। एंड देयर आर सम स्टार्टअप्स एज वेल। नस्ट का मुझे याद है, लास्ट टाइम मैं फिक्स पे गया था तो वहाँ पे मिले हमें जो कि ब्रिक्स बना रहे थे किसी और रिसाइकल्ड मटेरियल से। सो इस तरह की बहुत सारी एग्जांपल्स हमारे पास मौजूद हैं, बट द टाइप ऑफ स्केल यू नीड फॉर कंस्ट्रक्शन वो जो है इट विल ओनली बी पॉसिबल थ्रू पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप्स। जब तक वो डी रिस्किंग जो उसकी है वो गवर्नमेंट नहीं करती। एंड उसके अंदर भी आई थिंक टू स्टार्ट ऑफ वो जो इनिशियल क्रिटिकल मास क्रिएट करना है किसी भी अच्छे इनिशिएटिव का, इट कैन बी फॉर एग्जांपल डन थ्रू गवर्नमेंट कन्वर्टिंग देयर ओन बिल्डिंग्स फर्स्ट। गवर्नमेंट की भी काफ़ी सारी बिल्डिंग्स बन रही हैं, बहुत सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स हो रहे हैं, which can be then sort of become an experimental ground for all these new technologies and new initiatives that are coming forward. अगर हम इंटरनेशनली बात करें तो बहुत सारे पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप सक्सेस केसेस हैं हमारे पास। एम्स्टर्डम सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी स्ट्रेटजी, उसके अंदर जितना भी आपका रिक्लेम मटेरियल है उसका एक एक्सचेंज क्रिएट कर दिया गया है, जैसे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज है उस तरह का। इसी तरह जो है इंडिया का स्मार्ट सिटी मिशन जो है उसके अंदर लो कार्बन हाउसिंग को पीपीपी मोड के अंदर जो है डेवलप किया गया है। बट द मेन थिंग इज के पाकिस्तान अनफॉर्चुनेटली इज नॉट दैट बिग अ मार्केट के उसके अंदर ये सारे आइडियाज चल सकें। So government has to sort of provide a piloting platform, a de-risking platform for these startups and good ideas that are coming from the private sector. लास्ट आपने जो बात की दैट वाज रिगार्डिंग द रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर। सो रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर जो है दैट इज़ अ हाईली स्पेकुलेशन बेस्ड एंड हाईली कंज्यूमर ड्रिवन सेक्टर। आई थिंक बिकॉज ऑफ लैक ऑफ फाइनेंशियल नॉलेज हम सब जो है हमारी फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी कुछ पैसे इकट्ठे होने पे यही होती है कि हम रियल एस्टेट के अंदर इन्वेस्ट करें। रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर का जो वर्किंग है that can be excellently explained through the philosophy of Hobbes and Adam Smith के कोई भी अच्छा काम तब तक नहीं करेगा जब तक उसका कोई ना कोई हम इंसेंटिव नहीं क्रिएट करेंगे। हम लोग जो है वो कोई नेकी किसी को खाना भी खिलाते हैं तो स्वाब के घर से खिलाते हैं हम। जो है वो अगर हम अनलेस हमें कोई गवर्नमेंट की रेगुलेशन फोर्स कर रही हो, हमारा कोई कस्टमर डिमांड ऐसी हो, इन्वेस्टर की डिमांड ऐसी हो, या हमारे पास कोई बिजनेस केस उसका अच्छा बन रहा हो, इसमें आई थिंक के ये क्योंकि यहाँ पे काफ़ी सारे लोग एकेडेमिया से भी मौजूद हैं, आई थिंक हमारा काम एक ये भी है एज एकेडमिशियंस के वी कम अप विद दैट sort of business cases around कि ये जो सर्कुलरिटी के या सस्टेनेबिलिटी के इनिशिएटिव्स हैं, हाउ कैन दे एक्चुअली हेल्प क्रिएट अ बिजनेस केस, अ पॉजिटिव बिजनेस केस, इकोनॉमिक केस बना सकें, ताकि लोग जो हैं वो ऑटोमेटिकली एक ऑर्गेनिक रीच के थ्रू उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना शुरू करें, रादर देन के हम गवर्नमेंट से कोशिश करें कि वो इन्फोर्स करवाएं। फॉर एग्जांपल प्लास्टिक बैग बैन आई थिंक एक बहुत बड़ी एग्जांपल है कि बिकॉज देयर वाज नो स्टडी इन्वॉल्व, देयर वाज नो वैल्यू चेन एनालिसिस कंडक्टेड, और उसकी वजह से इस्लामाबाद में आप इस्लामाबाद जैसी छोटी जगह पे भी यू वर नॉट एबल टू फुली इम्प्लीमेंट द प्लास्टिक बैग बैन, और उल्टा वो आई थिंक के कंज्यूमर्स को और ज़्यादा लोगों को मौका मिल गया एक्सप्लॉइट करने का, और अब आपको वो नॉन बायोडिग्रेडेबल बैग्स जो हैं वो भी आपको 90 रुपये 150 रुपये तक के मिलते हैं। तो बट द मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट जो यहाँ पे है वो ये है कि आई थिंक या तो हम कोई अवेयरनेस कैंपेन ऐसी रेज करें जो कि हमारे कस्टमर की अचानक टेंडेंसी चेंज हो जाए, विच आई डोंट फोरसी इन अ मीडियम टर्म एटलीस्ट। द ओनली थिंग दैट कैन बी डन इज के इंसेंटिव्स के थ्रू, एंड आई डोंट लाइक to use subsidies, but subsidies can also be used. But majorly incentives के थ्रू हम किसी तरह ये बिजनेस केस बना सकें कि जो कॉस्ट का डिफरेंशियल आ रहा है, जैसे आई थिंक पहले भी एक स्पीकर ने बताया था, वो कॉस्ट का डिफरेंशियल खत्म हो सके। और उसका दूसरा तरीक़ेकार स्केल है कि फॉर एग्जांपल इफ़ वी कैन क्रिएट द स्केल थ्रू गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट विच कैन बी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ क्रिटिकल मास, गवर्नमेंट अपनी बिल्डिंग्स अभी जो है एक प्लान ये भी डिस्कस हुआ था कि ये G6 और G7 में जो गवर्नमेंट क्वार्टर्स बने हुए हैं इनको तोड़ के हाई राइजेस बनाई जाएंगी, तो उस पे पहले से गवर्नमेंट जो है वो इन चीज़ों को इम्प्लीमेंट कर ले। ये प्रोजेक्ट्स जो मतलब नेक्स्ट 5-10 ईयर्स में करने हैं, तो ऑटोमेटिकली आई थिंक इट विल क्रिएट अ बिजनेस केस फॉर दिस। थैंक यू जी।
थैंक यू वेरी मच आहद, और आपने बहुत अच्छे पॉइंट्स रेज किए। आई थिंक ये प्लास्टिक बैग वाली एग्जांपल बहुत वैलिड है अभी, और स्टार्टअप्स को अगर हम लिंक करें, सो वी हैव सो मेनी स्टार्टअप्स जो आपको 4-5 रुपए में बायोडिग्रेडेबल बैग्स प्रोवाइड करने को रेडी है। ओनली इशू इज दैट स्केलेबिलिटी के लिए पब्लिक सेक्टर साइड से ओनरशिप एंड recognition, and then how the planning phase, how we are going to connect them with the private sector and private industry and consumer awareness के लिए communication planning and strategy नहीं है। I think वो बहुत बड़ा challenge है। कुछ ऐसे startups भी हैं जो ऐसा मटेरियल क्रिएट कर रहे हैं बाय रिसाइकलिंग प्लास्टिक्स एंड अदर, जो कि अच्छा रिलायबल मटेरियल है और कंस्ट्रक्शन इंडस्ट्री उसको एज पायलट केस तौर पे ले भी रही है। लेकिन आई थिंक जहाँ R&D थोड़ी मिसिंग है, और वो इसलिए मिसिंग है कि हम एकेडेमिया को इंटीग्रेट नहीं कर रहे। द चैलेंज इज, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, वी गो अबाउट कंस्ट्रक्टिंग प्लास्टिक्स रोड, roads made out of plastic without any feasibility studies, only because हमें अपना कचरा मैनेज करना है और feasibility assessment नहीं होती, and then we end up with environmental crisis कि it's leaching down into our water resources, aquifers, and it's polluting the soil. So I think यहाँ पे public sector, private sector and academia needs to join hands. Without this, it's impossible. Last two speakers, and then I'll ask Dr. Suleri to conclude. Akbar साहब, मैं आपका लाजमी कमेंट लूंगी। हमारे पास वी आर स्टिल लेफ्ट विद 30 मिनट्स, सो जस्ट आई नीड टू गिव टाइम टू माय स्पीकर्स एट दिस पॉइंट। सो Junaid Khan is with us, and then I'll be taking Noman. So Junaid Khan is from he's a civil engineer from NESPAC Islamabad. Junaid, if you can shed some light on the challenges, especially जो policy side or financial side पे जो challenges हैं which is hindering the progress towards circular economy की तरफ, और कंस्ट्रक्शन इंडस्ट्री उस तरफ क्यों नहीं जा पा रही। एक चैलेंज हमने सुन लिया, इंसेंटिव नहीं है, बट व्हाट एल्स? सो ओवर टू यू प्लीज।
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सबसे पहले थैंक यू सो मच जैनब, आपने मुझे इनवाइट किया। मैं थोड़ा सा ना बैकग्राउंड पे जाता हूँ अपनी, जिस तरह कंस्ट्रक्शन इंडस्ट्री के उस पे, कि अब जिस तरह देखा जाए कि पूरे पाकिस्तान की जो 2.5 जो पाकिस्तान की कंस्ट्रक्शन इंडस्ट्री है वो पूरी नेशनल जीडीपी के ऊपर 2.5% रिलाई कर रही है, और उसके अंदर 8% ऑफ लेबर कॉस्ट है हमारी, जो कि बहुत अच्छी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ है। लेकिन हम उस साइड पे अगर देखें तो कार्बन इमिशन की सबसे बड़ी मेन कॉज है, एंड जो डिप्लीशन की है। तो अब हम इसको देखें, जो कि पूरी की पूरी 39% ऑफ टोटल एनर्जी जो रिलेटेड कार्बन इमिशन क्रिएट कर रही है। तो अब इससे हमारी जो बिल्डिंग की प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, जो रैपिड अर्बनाइजेशंस हैं, तो ये काफ़ी इनएफिशिएंट फॉर बिल्डिंग प्रैक्टिसेस हैं। सो अगर हम देखते हैं कि जो पूरी कंट्री का टोटल वेस्ट, इसमें से 30-40% जो कि वेस्ट है वो सॉलिड वेस्ट और कंस्ट्रक्शन डिमोलेशन वेस्ट है, जो कि पूरी की पूरी हमारे उसके अंदर, मुल्क के अंदर आता है। तो बदकिस्मती से कि हमारे पास कोई उसका कोई फ्रेमवर्क नहीं है कि हम उसके जो हमारी वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट है कि हम उसके ऊपर काम कर सकें और इतने बड़े वेस्ट को हम कहीं वो कर सकें, किसी यूजफुल जगह पे हम कर सकें। तो अब यहाँ पर देखा जाए कि 12 मिलियन यूनिट्स के अंदर सिर्फ और सिर्फ 12 मिलियन यूनिट्स के अंदर सिर्फ 0.2% ग्रीन बिल्डिंग्स पाकिस्तान के अंदर हैं, जो कि ग्रीन एफिशिएंट बिल्डिंग्स हैं। तो हमें एक इसको एड्रेस करने के लिए आई थिंक हमें बहुत ही स्ट्रॉन्ग पॉलिसी और फ्रेमवर्क की ज़रूरत है। अब जाहिर सी बात है, देखें पॉलिसी और फ्रेमवर्क तो आप बना लेंगे, लेकिन आपको फाइनेंशियल इंसेंटिव्स भी चाहिए जो कि इंडस्ट्री को कोलैबोरेशन में करें और उसके ऊपर वर्क कर सकें। तो इसमें हमें अगर हम इसके अंदर देखते हैं तो हमें ग्रीन एफिशिएंसी चाहिए, ग्रीन एफिशिएंसी इन डिज़ाइन चाहिए, और स्ट्रिक्टली इन्फोर्स बिल्डिंग कोड्स चाहिए, जो कि बार बार बात हो रही थी। मैम श्री रहमान ने भी कहा था कि हम ग्रीन बिल्डिंग कोड्स के ऊपर वो कर रहे हैं काम वगैरह, और इनके ऊपर हमें सबसे ज़्यादा चाहिए। अब मैं खुद भी पीसी के काफ़ी सेशंस वो अटेंड कर चुका हूँ, तो उसमें भी हमेशा यही बात होती है, लेकिन बदकिस्मती से कि इन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन अभी तक हमें नहीं दिखी। तो अब दूसरी तरफ पे जब हम जाते हैं कि हमें ग्रीन बॉन्ड्स की तरफ जाना चाहिए, कंसेशनल लोन्स की तरफ जाना चाहिए, सस्टेनेबिलिटी लिंक फाइनेंसिंग की तरफ जाना चाहिए, जो कि जिस तरह आज सर ने बड़ी अच्छी बात की कि प्राइवेट पब्लिक प्राइवेट ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स की तरफ जाना चाहिए, प्राइवेट पब्लिक ग्रीन उसकी तरफ पब्लिक प्राइवेट की तरफ जाना चाहिए। लेकिन इसके अंदर अगर हम पब्लिक प्राइवेट और गवर्नमेंट को अलाइन करके अगर हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स ले आते हैं, तो उसके अंदर हमारे लिए एक जो स्टार्टअप्स जो उन्होंने बात की, उनके लिए हमारे पास बड़ा अच्छा हो जाएगा कि हम उनको ग्रो कर सकें, उनको हम वो कर सकें। अब जिस तरह हम इंटरनेशनली अगर हम इसकी एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं, लाइक अब जब हम सिंगापुर का देखते हैं, सिंगापुर मार्क इंसेंटिव स्कीम जो शुरू की है उन्होंने, उसके अंदर उन्होंने क्या किया है कि अपने जो ग्रीन एफिशिएंट बिल्डिंग एंड सस्टेनेबल प्रैक्टिस को उन्होंने फाइनेंशियल इंसेंटिव्स की तरफ उनको रेगुलेटरी सपोर्ट दी है, जो कि वो उनकी जो कि डेवलपर्स को और बिल्डिंग ओनर्स को उन्होंने ग्रांट्स दिए हैं और सब्सिडाइज के भाई आप ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजीज को अपनी बिल्डिंग्स के अंदर इम्प्लीमेंट करें। सो ये एक बहुत अच्छा है, हमारे पास एक एग्जांपल आ जाती है जो कि रिड्यूस करती है बिल्डिंग कंजप्शन, और इससे देखा गया कि इसकी सक्सेस रेट इतनी थी कि 25% इसने बिल्डिंग एनर्जी कंजप्शन रिड्यूस की है। तो ये काफ़ी एक अच्छा हमारे पास एग्जांपल है। और एक और एग्जांपल अगर हम देखते हैं तो जर्मनी की KfW जो ग्रीन लोन प्रोग्राम इन्होंने शुरू किया है, उसके अंदर इन्होंने काफ़ी जिस तरह लो इंटरेस्ट लोन और ग्रांट्स डेवलपर्स देना शुरू कर दिए, होम ओनर्स को देना शुरू कर दिए कि आप ग्रीन एफिशिएंट बिल्डिंग्स की तरफ जाएं, प्रोजेक्ट की तरफ जाएं। अब मैं खुद भी जिस तरह बात चली थी स्टार्टअप की, मेरी खुद मैं सिविल इंजीनियर हूँ, मेरी खुद की रिसर्च जो थी वो थी कि वेस्ट टायर्स को हम किस तरह यूज़ कर सकते हैं सस्टेनेबल कंक्रीट के अंदर। तो अब उसके अंदर हमने रिसर्च की है, उसके अंदर अब मैकेनिकल और थर्मल दोनों हमने इसके ऊपर रिसर्च किया कि अगर हम इनको यूज़ करते हैं थर्मली क्या इसके ऊपर इफेक्ट आता है, और इसके मैकेनिकली इसके ऊपर इसकी स्ट्रेंथ के ऊपर क्या फ़र्क आएगा कंक्रीट की। तो वो हमारे पास काफ़ी अच्छे रिजल्ट्स आए हैं उसके। और इस तरह काफ़ी जिस तरह प्लास्टिक बैग की उन्होंने बात की, आपने जिस तरह वो प्लास्टिक रोड की बात की, तो जाहिर सी बात है देखिए जब आप ऐसी चीज़ें करते हैं तो आपको फंड्स की ज़रूरत होती है और वो चीज़ों की ज़रूरत होती है। तो हमें चाहिए कि जिस तरह अब जर्मनी का उन्होंने बैंक बनाया, सिंगापुर की उन्होंने एक माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक बनाया और वो सारी चीज़ें की, तो मुझे जहाँ तक लगता है कि हमें भी इस तरह की पॉलिसीज की ज़रूरत है, फ्रेमवर्क की ज़रूरत है कि हमें भी इस तरह बैंक्स और वो प्राइवेट पब्लिक ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड्स की ज़रूरत है, ताकि हम इसको एक नेक्स्ट लेवल लेके जा सकें। थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you very much, Junaid, for quoting international best practices and some of those practices that can easily be replicated in Pakistan. And you're absolutely spot on that, role of microfinance sector, innovative blended financing schemes, it can play an instrumental role when we are talking about sustainable construction and integrating circularity within construction and real estate sector in Pakistan. So thank you for your intervention. Yes, Numan, you have been waiting for long. Apologies for that, but I think as a development sector side के specialist हैं आप, UNOPS को represent कर रहे हैं. I wanted कि आप last में हमें जो है वो share कर रहे हो जो आप लोगों का project भी चला है. So you're the last speaker for today, and then I'll be requesting Dr. Suleri for his concluding remarks. Over to you, Numan.
Thank you, Zainab, for inviting me. मेरी थोड़ी सी है presentation, कोई 12 slides. I would like to present that what we are doing in the resilient infrastructure space in Pakistan. Is it okay?
अगर आप 5 to 6 minutes में wrap up कर सकते हैं तो please.
Yeah, I will try. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So I will just go quickly towards some of the examples from my experience of working with UNOPS Pakistan in designing climate resilient infrastructure. We all know that the 79% of green gas emissions are due to the infrastructure, but at the same time, infrastructure, is important, and we can, it can go towards the adaptation as well. What UNOPS is basically the operational arm of the UN. We are working in 80 countries. Our annual turnover is $1.8 billion of infrastructure, procurement, project management. In Pakistan, we are operational since 1999, and we have done like a couple of projects in procurement and also in the resilient infrastructure space in Pakistan. I will quickly go towards some of the projects. We recently, after the 2022 floods, we have implemented a project which is called Ghar project, which is a green housing, resilient and affordable. It was a pilot project. We also constructed some of the model women police station, which we believe is a climate responsive design. And we also built bridges in Kalam after 2010 floods. This green housing, affordable and resilient, as I said, came after the 2022 floods. It's a pilot project. We all know about the damages of which this flood has caused. $15 billion in infrastructure and 2 million houses are to be built in Pakistan, mostly in Sindh. Through this project, we have built, did some technical coordination and capacity building for SPHF. We also constructed some green and resilient model houses, which I'm going to be talking in the next few slides. We have also trained masons, students, and government officials in this space, because we as engineers and architects know a lot about the conventional buildings, but when it comes to rural housing, there is a very less knowledge available among the academia as well. Through this project, we have trained 100 masons. We have disseminated knowledge among more than 1,000 students on green infrastructure to 8 seminars, which we organized in different engineering universities across Pakistan. We have trained more than 500 professionals and 190 government officials on the green infrastructure across Pakistan. In this project, what we did with SPHF, we have created a resilient housing working group, which was looking into development of technical guidelines for housing reconstruction. We also did supply chain analysis for Sindh, because for 2 million houses, what is the market response? Because if bricks are not available and the construction material is not available, the construction pace can be hindered. We also developed accelerated training curricula for semi-skilled masons. We also have tested that curricula through model houses. So once we developed it, it was our on-job training. You can see that in pictures. We have built some model houses through the same masons. So they were basically master trainers. And we would believe that when they would be going out in the field, they would also train other people as well. We also did some roof improvement techniques because most of the damages in Sindh, which we observed, was through roofing damage. Roof was damaged because of the rain, and it caused the walls to collapse. These are some pictures. We all know that what DRR elements are required for a flood resilient house. You have to high plane protection, foundation protection, waterproof walls, and also to waterproof the roof as well. Through GAR, we have learned some lessons. The main lesson is we all as an organization and institution should provide internship and research opportunities for the students, to drive the green and affordable housing in Pakistan. We should also be collaborating with local organizations, and also the research should be an applied research which can be scalable. We have come across some really good ideas during those seminars, which should have been scaled, but we don't see any improvement as of now. This is basically a women police hostel which we built. It's a climate responsive design. It is a multi-hazard risk reduction design. It can withstand earthquake, floods, and even lighting as well. How it is climate responsive, we have built shaded passages. We have went for natural ventilation, cavity walls, and roof insulation. It was not very easy because when we were talking with the client, they said, okay, just make us a block building. It should be similar building, the one we have. But we, went for a lot of discussions, and then we agreed to have, a different building than the one they already have, which should be a climate responsive building. This is basically, we built it for National Highway and Motorway Police and for Sindh Police in Sindh. You see, if you look at the perspective view, you will see like there are green passages. One portion of the building is shading the other, and also we have provided cavity walls. When we mobilized the contractor, it was very difficult for the contractor to digest how the cavity wall will be constructed. So even then, the contractors do not have a knowledge about a cavity wall. We are so used to the conventional building techniques that even the contracting sector is reluctant to change. They were asking, okay, why not just do the 8-inch or 9-inch block wall? So it was very difficult, but then we were successful. We have trained 6 contractors on these buildings. We have also built bridges after 2010 floods in Pakistan. These bridges are up in Kalam. They are providing access to 49,000 beneficiaries. These are some of the bridges. These bridges were built on the Euro codes because Pakistan doesn't have codes for these type of bridges. Mostly we have for RCC bridges in steel, but these were not there. So we use the Euro codes for it. These bridges, we believe that can withstand 1 in 100 years flood. They were also given some additional mechanical components for flood protection, and the lifespan is around 50 years. We have another project that is with infrastructure for the incinerators. This is just kick-started last year in October. It is still ongoing. Here we have tried to come up again with a design which is environmentally friendly. It is again having the cavity walls. This design was basically inspired by one of the building designed by Sir Kamil Khan Mumtaz. We tried to capture some of his work in this building. We have moved towards passive design, natural ventilation. We also tried to use, plastic bricks. I have personally reached out to some of the startups which are basically, in the same business. They are developing, but the research is not there, because of the risk of microplastic, that is still there. We have these startups were there, and they also need support. So I would really request if they can be supported through NAP or any other institutions, so that they can test their product. Because when I presented it to our headquarters, they were asking so many questions regarding plastic composition, their thermal efficiency, and most importantly, the risk of the microplastic, which I was not able to explain because we don't have the data for it. So that is my request. If someone have any information, any data related to plastic bricks, please do reach out to me or to STPI, so that knowledge can be shared and we can utilize that in the upcoming projects. Thank you very much. I hope I was quick enough.
Yes, you were. Thank you very much, Naman, for sharing the UNOPS work, and I think it's a great work that you are doing, and I look forward to discussing with you and all other partners who have joined us today for how we can collaborate for circular economy transition in the construction industry and real estate sector. Now, I would request Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, who is Executive Director of STPI and also has been a member of Advisory Council of COP29 and also is a member of Advisory Council of the Asian Development Bank Institute, for his concluding remarks. Dr. Abid Suleri, over to you.
Thank you, Zainab. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, my word of appreciation to Team STPI for convening this webinar on a sector which is often discussed in the context of taxation only, I think perhaps it is one of the first move where we are talking of circularity and we're talking of how to reduce carbon footprints in construction industry and real estate sector, and how to make it climate resilient. So keep up the good work, team STPI. Now, I also want to express my gratitude to Senator Shari Rahman for her insightful opening remarks. The support of legislators and especially her personal support in greening Pakistan's economy and in environmental conservation is much needed and much lauded. Now, the discussion that took place today that highlighted that how unsustainable resource extraction and high carbon emission from construction industry and demolition waste, they are playing havoc not only with our climate and carbon emission, but also in terms of their contribution to air pollution. We know that smog is not only due to agriculture waste burning, it's also due to our vehicular emission and due to our construction industry. And when we're talking of SDGs 11 and SDGs 12, sustainable cities and sustainable consumption and production. So basically, we're talking of coherent and integrated policy to make our construction sector clean and green. While we are talking of taxation and in the month of in the run-up to federal budget, I think we need to link greening construction industry with their taxation that we want to get from them. So using a carrot and stick policy that would actually help us achieving both objectives. I think there must be tax incentives for green construction industry and green real estate, and there must be heavy penalties and heavy taxes for construction, which is quote unquote not green or which has more carbon emission, and that would serve both purposes. Linking it with the circular economy roadmap, and some of the presenters, they have very adequately and very skillfully presented how one can use this recycled material in our construction. I think that is the way forward, and that is what needs to be incentivized. We are also almost in the final stage of preparation of our NDCs, and I think in our NDCs we also need to link some of the recommendation of the discussion, which can very smoothly gel in with our NDC objectives. National Adaptation Plan, Green Building Regulations, Circular Economy Roadmap. These are some of the initiatives which are now being taken, and I think rather than creating and implementing these initiatives in silos, the need to adopt a whole of policy, whole of government approach is very much there. And finally, we recognize and deeply appreciate the support of our partners whose efforts in promoting circularity and sustainability have been instrumental in advancing this dialogue. Moving forward, a multi-stakeholder approach spanning policymakers, industry leaders, financial institutions, and researchers will be critical to overcoming regulatory barriers, fostering innovation, and unlocking investment for climate resilient infrastructure. Together, we can drive systemic changes, ensuring that Pakistan's construction sector not only meets the demand of a growing population, but does so in a way that is sustainable, climate resilient, and aligned with global best practices. Thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to continued collaboration on this important agenda. Over to you, Zainab.
Thank you very much, sir, for the remarks. And also, you pointed this out, right, that, in context of taxation, we do discuss this industry, but never has this industry been taken on board when we are talking about climate change planning process. And I think I'm really glad that this discussion took place today. And I'm really glad that we had participation from the industry. I know there are many questions from our participants and from our speakers as well who want to raise certain questions. But because of the time limitation, I would request you all, you have our email address, you have, access to our social media also. Please write to us your questions, your key recommendations, so that we can integrate those recommendations within the National Circular Economy Policy draft that is being prepared. We'll also be reaching out to you individually to get, recommendations, to get your feedback on what you think could have been discussed, and if anything that we have missed out, so that we can, integrate it. Thank you once again. Thank you for your time, and thank you for such an insightful discussion and participation. To all the participants also who couldn't join us as speaker, thank you for your time, and have a good day, everyone. Thank you.